Hey everybody, it's Fox with FoxeoGames, and this is a Fox First Scent of 20XX for the PC. This is a game I've been looking at for a while, but I was waiting for it to come out of early access. Unfortunately, it's not always easy to tell when you're watching a game when it comes out of early access because there isn't necessarily a notification given to you, and in fact, when you put it on your wish list, there's nothing immediately present on the wish list that indicates whether it's still in early access or is early access at all. So I would occasionally check back and found that it was out of early access and went ahead and picked it up. It looked interesting based on what I saw. It's basically a rogue-like Mega Man inspired platformer, kind of a run and gunner. There's a lot of RNG or randomness to the game, so each time you go through they randomize the levels and enemies, and I think also the order in which you encounter at least some of the bosses. Now, as you get to the end of each stage, you have an option to select from among 3 different stages, so there are branching paths as well. There's a lot of variety here, meaning that no 2 runs will be exactly alike, especially since you get different power-ups that drop throughout the level. You also get the power that the boss had during the boss fight, which in this case I got this ability that basically shoots out like a sort of a, I don't know what you call it, rapid fire yellow laser. And of course your basic attack is straight up the blaster from Mega Man. You can even charge it, although so far I can only charge it one time. There weren't multiple charge levels. Now, the title 20XX is obviously a reference to the Mega Man series, which in many of the games would say that it was occurring, or the Mega Man in question was occurring during the year 20XX. I guess they just figured, hey, whatever, it's in the 2000s, who cares, it doesn't matter when. Of course, you know, we could say 19XX, heck, you know, let's just say XXXX. It occurred in the year XXXX. That way, no matter what year it currently is, you could imagine it's in the future. Because if you're playing Mega Man in the year 3000 and it says 20XX, you're thinking, oh, this was in the past. And obviously Mega Man wants you to think it's in the future. Surprisingly, this game has a borderless windowed mode. I was very surprised by that. Most of the time, especially in 2D games, you see very few options, and borderless window tends to be one that gets left behind a lot of times. The game actually has a really good tutorial that takes you through it. It has little icons in the background that show you what button to press. It doesn't bother you with dialogue boxes. There's not an annoying character that you have to click through dialogue and get him to shut up. It doesn't sit there and go, hey, look, there's a hole in front of you. Maybe if you jump, you can get over it. No, it's none of that nonsense. It just tells you the button in the background, and then you just kind of go through the level. And you figure it out as you go. Like when you jump and you miss and you hit the wall and you're sliding down it, you're like, oh, it's got that Mega Man wall slide thing. That's cool as well. The FX in the game, the effects, the sound effects, everything are really, really awesome. So they did a great job there making it feel powerful when you're shooting stuff, when stuff blows up, the screen shakes at times. There's all sorts of awesome effects that go on. So that feels cool. And that's really important for a run and gunner platformer. Like you want the shooting, you want the enemies, you want the attacks, you want the special moves that you have, and in this case there are many special powers like a boomerang attack. You want all that to feel cool, just to have this punch to it. Kind of like when you're playing a first-person shooter. You want the guns to have this sort of punch, to feel like you're just shooting something. You know, you want, when something blows up, to feel like it's really blowing up, and giving a little screen shake, and having the screen flash, and lots of flashy effects, and loud booms and explosion sounds. All of that makes a big difference, and surprisingly, if you take that away from the game, a lot of games are far less fun to play. So something we often don't think about is making the effects and explosions and all this other stuff seem really cool. Even in some cases seem cooler than they really are. Money for upgrades. You collect resources. I think there are 2 different kinds of like scrap, and then there's like a money resource, and you can use these to either buy permanent upgrades that stay with your character from one run to the next, because when you die, that's it, you start over. It is a roguelike, so that's one of the elements of being a roguelike. You have to die and then have to start over. But it's a roguelike, or light, if you want to call it that. Roguelite, whatever, it doesn't matter, who cares? These terms are sort of ambiguous at times. In the sense, it's a roguelite in the sense that you actually continue on with some stuff being permanent to your character. In a straight-up roguelike game, you start each run completely fresh, completely new. Kind of like, say, Binding of Isaac. Or obviously the original Rogue. There are challenge areas in each level. You can actually go into them. They're optional, and it tells you, to destroy everything as quickly as possible for a glory benefit, or you get some reward at the end. I failed one of them, got the other one. I think maybe it's timed, or maybe it's you take a certain number of hits. Not sure exactly what the conditions were for that. The branching paths at the end, as we mentioned, is really cool because that makes it so that not only are you getting a different run each time, but you can select different levels each time, and you know who the boss is going to be at the end based on it showing you, kind of like Mega Man style. You see the robot boss at the end. Even the main character, the protagonist, there are two of them. One I think is called Nina, and the other one I couldn't read because the name was hidden by some other stuff on the screen. But there's, I think, a male and a female robot, which obviously doesn't make sense, but they're just made to look male and female. Who cares, right? One of the biggest problems I had with the game, which is relatively minor, and I'm absolutely positive this is because of G-Sync, which most of you do not have and don't have to worry about, but occasionally when it would load a new area, it would come in at 24 frames per second. As you can see, the game normally runs at 144. That is the maximum hertz of my monitor, 144 hertz. So my monitor ideally wants games running at 144 frames per second non-stop steady, and with G-Sync, it locks it to 144, so we won't see that go above it. So even if the game could run at 1000, it'll lock to 144 because there's no point in going above that for purposes of my monitor and seeing a smooth gameplay. So the gameplay was super awesome, super smooth, up to 144, which is really cool because usually 2D platformers lock to 60. They just figure, hey, what's the point? It's not a 3D game. Why do you need to go above 60? Well, it does make a difference. You can actually get smoother performance and smoother visuals. In fact, when I first got my very first 144 hertz monitor, I immediately noticed the difference in the smoothness of the motion just moving windows around. Inside Windows, I think I was using Windows 8 at the time. Just moving a window was smoother looking and nicer looking. So yes, it does make a difference even in 2D games, obviously not as much as 3D. So when the G-Sync would encounter some little issue, the game would drop to 24 frames per second, but if I clicked away from the screen and clicked back, because I do have a second monitor, it would automatically fix itself. Minor issue right there, probably won't affect most people. Gotta say, 20XX was a really fun game. I actually played it until I died. I sort of got a little sloppy towards the end because I wanted to see what happened when I died, and it's exactly what I thought. You have to restart your run. I think I only got one permanent upgrade, and then of course you can buy limited temporary upgrades that only apply to your next run. And it's very clear, there's sort of a headquarters area where you start out, and you can choose to buy some stuff, permanent upgrades, and you can choose also to buy temporary upgrades that only apply to the next run. Really fun game. I'm definitely glad I picked it up, and I'm definitely going to get to playing it more because, hey, it's like a roguelike or roguelite, whatever you want to call it, Mega Man inspired game. In fact, you could almost call it a Mega Man clone. It looks and feels and plays so much like it. Basic controls are spot on, and that is the most important thing for a platformer. If they get the controls bad, that will kill the game. But in this case, 20XX has spot on, near perfect controls. I never once felt like the controls failed me. If I didn't make a jump, it was my fault. If I got hit, it was my fault. And I felt like I had all of the accuracy that I needed. Of course, I did play with the Xbox One controller. I would never seriously try to play a game like this with the mouse and keyboard. I don't recommend you do that either. And as a hardcore PC gamer saying that, well, I'm a hardcore PC gamer. I'm saying that. I'm a big fan of using the best tool for the job. I don't think you should use a hammer when a screwdriver's best, or a screwdriver when a hammer's best. And sometimes you want a screwdriver, you want a gamepad, and sometimes you want a hammer, you want a mouse and keyboard. So use what's best for the game. That's how I play. That's how I approach PC gaming as a longtime PC gamer since the early 90s. But hey, that's a different discussion for a different video. Maybe I'll do a Fox Thoughts on that. But this is 20XX, available on Steam. I picked it up on sale in the winter sale, and I'm sure glad I did. I'm Fox with FoxeoGames, and I will see you guys next time.